If I were to ask you to draw an outline of all land ever occupied by Czechoslovakia, you'd probably draw something like this, but you're wrong actually. In reality, a more accurate map would look something like this. Notice that massive red line along there. Now for those of you who don't know the history of the Russian Civil War, you might be very confused right now, so let me explain. In 1914, World War I began, and Czech and Slovak men were conscripted to fight by the Austro-Hungarians against Russia, and a bunch of these men got captured by Russia, and Russia offered them a deal. If you fight for us against the Austro-Hungarian Empire, we will free your homeland and make an independent Czechoslovak state when we win. They took the deal, and soon a legion of 40,000 Czechoslovaks were fighting for the Russians against the Austrians. But then, the Russian government was overthrown twice, and Russia was defeated. If they wanted to fight the Central Powers now, they were simply going to have to get to the Western Front and fight them there. However, slight problem, they can't get to the Western Front because of Germany. They were going to have to go all the way around the other side of the world if they wanted to continue the war. They hopped on the train along the Trans-Siberian Railway. Their plan was to get to Vladivostok, where the Allied navies could then pick them up and ferry them back to France. From France, they could then march to Czechoslovakia. And then they were never ever going to lose a game of two truths and a lie. But on the way, the new Bolshevik government in Russia started demanding that the Czechoslovakians hand over more and more of their weapons. And because they just wanted to get home at this point, they agreed. And soon, many of the Czechoslovak weapons were in the hands of the Bolsheviks. However, then something happened. A bunch of captured Hungarian prisoners who were loyal to Austria-Hungary were riding a train through Russia, and then, along the way, they saw a bunch of Czechoslovakians. A lump of iron was thrown out of that train, hit one of the Czechoslovakians on the head, he fell over onto the train tracks, and the next train very nearly squished him. The Czechoslovakian unit, nearby, chased the train, presumably they had their own train, until eventually they caught it and said, right, who threw that lump of iron? And I said, if you don't own up, we are going to kill 1/10 of all the men on this train. The local Bolshevik authorities intervened and arrested those Czechoslovak soldiers. A bunch of other Czechoslovak soldiers managed to forcibly liberate those, prisoners. And the Bolsheviks used that as a pretext to disarm and arrest the entire Czechoslovak legion. So they knew exactly what the Red Guard was planning, and they decided to strike first. The revolt of the Czechoslovak legion began. They marched on the city of Yekaterinburg, where the Tsar and his family were under house arrest. The Bolsheviks could not let the Tsar be liberated. You see, he had a claim to the throne of Russia, and if the Czechoslovaks would liberate him, millions would rise up to restore him to the throne. So he was killed. Soon after the city was occupied, the Russian Civil War was fought between the Reds and the Whites. The Czechoslovakians sided with the Whites, but the Whites lost. In 1919, the Czechoslovakians found themselves surrounded with Allied soldiers. They had only one hope of survival. The leader of the Russian White movement was arrested by the Czechoslovakians, who then sold him to the Bolsheviks in exchange for their freedom. The Allies evacuated them to Europe. They returned to Czechoslovakia in about 1920-21, after being conscripted from there in 1914, like 7 or 8 years ago.